Now let's look at a question about a SWOT analysis. Now, SWOT analysis questions may come in a range of formats. You might simply be able or asked to define what a SWOT analysis tool is. You could be asked to identify strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for a given case study. You might be asked to evaluate a particular industry using a SWOT analysis, or you might have decided to use it for your internal assessment. There's a few key things about SWOT that students commonly get wrong or have misconceptions around. Probably the single biggest one is that a SWOT analysis is not designed to be used around a specific business strategy. The SWOT analysis can't be used to evaluate this part of a business. It needs to be applied to the business as a whole so that you can then determine what strategies or approaches or goals or objectives you might want to tackle. So step one, when you're dealing with a SWOT analysis, you are looking at the business as a whole entity. You are not just evaluating the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats around a particular issue. Having said that, you might narrow your later analysis to focus on the elements of the SWOT that directly affect that issue. But it's important to start broad and come down rather than just focus in on one particular point. So now that that's out of the way, if you're trying to tackle what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, the important part to remember is that a strength and a weakness, they're internal factors. So they're things that the business directly experiences and controls within the organization, okay? So an example of a strength, you've got incredibly highly skilled staff, all right? You've picked them, they currently work for you, you are experiencing the benefits of that strength. It's happening now, and it's within your control. Okay. A weakness, on the other hand, might be you have very high staff turnover. So they're poorly trained or you're constantly having to spend to retrain them. Again, it's something that's happening now and it's within the organization's control. Opportunities and threats, however, are external to the business. And what that means as well is that they haven't yet happened to the business. They're potential things. They're things that could affect the business now or in the future. So when we're dealing with opportunities, it might be that a competitor has closed down or moved away. You now have an opportunity for a new target market. That doesn't mean you guarantee to capture that market. What it means is that you could capture that market if you make the right decisions, if you put the right strategy in place. The same is true for threats. They haven't yet happened, but they're external factors that create the potential for something to happen. So a threat might be that a new competitor is starting up in your area. Now that doesn't mean they're going to drive you out and they're going to steal all your customers, but they create a threat or the potential that that will happen. And because that threat exists, you need to think about your strategies and your approach to prevent that from occurring. So key distinction, strengths and weaknesses inside the business, opportunities and threats outside the business. And if you just remember that, you should pretty consistently define them. Now, if you're going to use a SWOT analysis, you're probably also going to analyze the effectiveness of it as a tool. If you're going to do that, some things to think about there. It has advantages because it's quite broad, because it allows you to get a big picture. It's good if you don't really know what the next step for a business is going to be. So you just want to get a general health check of your organization. But the downside of it being so broad is that it's easy to miss things. It's also quite subjective. You have to really think carefully about where is the information coming from, how is it being collected, is there process involved in how that analysis is being undertaken. SWOTs can often be done in a quite sloppy manner, and so the information is quite shallow. It doesn't provide really solid grounding for business decisions to be made. Students, when using SWOTs for internal assessments or to analyze in their essays, will often just give sort of a shallow, oh, it said this, therefore we should. It's really important to take the piece of information. It says this might happen. The information is strong, weak, really reliable, consider it, okay? And therefore, these are things we could do, okay? So you're being a little bit more critical and really reflecting on the information rather than just taking it as at face value, we should do the following. And that's a SWOT analysis.